really get to know environmental justice, it's important to know where environmental justice began. So historically, many factors have shaped the built and natural environment that surround us today. Factors like race, class, gender, labor markets, industry interest, and politics have all had impacts on the environment around us. In the mid to late 1960s, the American people really began to question the value they placed on the natural environment around them. Iconic early environmentalists like Rachel Carson began to shine a spotlight on their lived experiences in the natural environment, specifically the negative impacts of human development and industry practices. It's crucial to recognize that while early environmentalists were working to spark a movement centered around the rights associated with a healthy natural environment, the civil rights movement was well underway. These two historical eras are inextricably linked, as ample research has shown that there's a correlation between an individual's socioeconomic status and their likelihood of negative environmental exposure. It's at this intersection of this correlation that the field of environmental justice can trace its roots.
So the term environmental justice was actually coined in the 80s, and it refers to the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of class, race, and national origin. It particularly concerns the development and implementation and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. So over time, environmental justice has evolved into a broader movement that encompasses not only environmental issues, but also takes into account social and economic factors that contribute to environmental disparities. This includes considerations of land use, planning, access to environmental resources, community empowerment, and environmental health education. This concept recognizes that historically marginalized communities have borne a disproportionate burden of environmental pollution and hazards. The historical roots of environmental justice trace all the way back to the early 20th century, when communities of color were frequently located near industrial zones, waste disposal sites, and other sources of pollution. These communities faced extractions of economic resources as well as higher rates of exposure to harmful pollutants, resulting in adverse health effects such as respiratory disease, cancer, and developmental issues. The environmental justice movement emerged in the late 20th century, gaining significant momentum in the 1980s and 90s as communities organized to address environmental injustices, to better understand resource extraction and advocate for equitable environmental policies. This activism led to recognition of environmental justice as a critical aspect of environmental, economic, and social justice policy.
Many people don't realize the wide array of projects that can be funded as environmental justice projects. Some of these topics include things like climate resilience, clean energy and energy efficiency, clean transportation, affordable and sustainable housing, food access, training and workforce development, water resource management, remediation and reduction of legacy pollution, development of crucial clean water infrastructure, and civic engagement. To give you an example of what something environmental justice related would look like in Southwestern PA, these types of projects are going to involve addressing the historical and current impacts of industry and climate change, particularly in areas like Beaver County and Allegheny County. Taken separately, our environment is everything around us, and justice is the act of being fair and morally righteous. By engaging, listening, and collaborating with community stakeholders, the goal is to build a vibrant and sustainable future. We all need to work together to ensure that the next 100 years are not only as prosperous as the last, but also address the significant differences in economic, environmental, and social outcomes. If you're new to the world of environmental justice work, then there are two important sources of federal funding to become familiar with: the Inflation Reduction Act, or the IRA, and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the BIL. Both of these valuable funding sources, among others, have created an unprecedented opportunity for new community investments, to the likes of which we haven't seen since the New Deal era. With almost $2 trillion in federal funding on the table, the Justice40 initiative is working to ensure that the impact of these funds flow to disadvantaged environmental justice communities. The Inflation Reduction Act, or the IRA, is the United States' most significant investment in clean energy and climate. Through tax credits, grants, loans, and cooperative agreements, the IRA will invest around $400 billion in energy, industry and manufacturing, the environment, buildings, agriculture, transportation, and water. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or the BIL, works to address the challenge of communities around the nation who are bearing the brunt of toxic pollution, underinvestment in infrastructure and critical services, and the disproportionate exposure to the impacts of climate change. The BIL will strengthen our nation's resilience to extreme weather and climate change, clean up toxic pollution, expand access to clean drinking water, remediate legacy pollution, deliver electric school buses to support clean air, and more. Federally designated environmental justice communities that are the focus of these investments are located in census tracts that are considered to be disadvantaged due to excessive climate, environmental, health, housing, and socioeconomic burdens.